Hello again. For those of you just joining us, this is our bare bones to-do app from the previous video. You can either go back and check that out if you want to follow along, or I will link the code down below the video. So this now has, this editor has a new style for the syntax highlighting, so hopefully that won't throw you all off, and I have set it up to auto update as well. For those of you just typing on your own, the best way is just to save it and hit refresh over here. Otherwise, there's a little function down here that you can pause and add if you like. And now let's get to it. So I told you there was a lot we could do to style this simple app. And first off, let's see about making it so that people actually know what this area is for. Because looking at it, you wouldn't necessarily know right off the bat. So we're going to add to this input here a placeholder. Now, this is commonly used in, say, username, password fields, anything you want to make sure that someone knows what they should type in. So now, this will show up in gray, and that'll just go away as soon as you start typing. It's just a hint for anyone using the app. And then when we actually enter something, this looks a little squashed, but we can do a few things here. Well, first off, let's add our style tag that we skipped in the previous video. So here, let's just style the body. Oh, sorry, my keyboard is not always great. And here, text align center, our old friend. Now, for the rest of it, we're going to want to put a div or a span, but here we'll just use a div around this value here. So let's put this on a new line. So this is that value that's coming from the text box, the input. And we're actually going to add a class for the first time. So this is going to show up on every single line. IDs have to be unique. Classes do not. So this will be, let's call it task, and we're going to capitalize that, task item. Now, when we go down to the style, we can say dot, period, and then the name of the class, so that'll find that for us. And we can say width 10 rem. So now, when we type something in, now there's an issue here, because we also have to add display inline block. Because the normal function of a div is to take up the entire line. So and you can actually see that if you go to the inspector. So right here, is taking up the whole width, but it's not leaving anything else on that line. So, but we change it to inline block, and then, very nice. Now we can also add a class. We could just search for the button, but in case we add any other buttons, let's add another class. So this is going to be our remove task class. So let's make that. Color refers to the text within. So let's make that red. And I'm going to make the background black. You can choose whatever fits your fancy. Let's go with white. And let's get rid of the border. And see how that ends up. And you've got a nice little X there, and make sure we know that it's clickable. So cursor, pointer. And now someone would know it was clickable. We can even do one better. But yeah, sure, let's show you that. Hover does some interesting things. This triggers whenever your mouse goes over an object. So when this happens, we'll change the background to blue. And there you go. Not the most visually attractive thing in the world, but it is showing interactivity. And let's say we want it to be round. We've had enough of squares, we want round. These have a little rounding naturally, so let's round this out as well. That can be done with border radius, and let's put this actually on here. And this can be, 2 pixels. It can be 1 rem. In this case, let's just go 100%. And then it's round. We can do something with this check mark here too. So in this case, let's say that when we click on it, we want it to do something. So that's this one here, the type checkbox. So onClick equals task done. Or let's say task complete. Let's say task done. So then we just have to add a new function here. Function, event, and don't forget to send the event and add these parentheses. So now we can once again use that event.target. That targets the input, and then we want its parent element. We used node before, but element is a little easier to remember perhaps. And in this case, we're going to say we want the style to change, and we want the access the background, and we're going to let that be green. Now there's an issue with this, because when we click, that'll make it green. When we click again, it stays green. So we're going to have to do something a little new for you. So we're going to check something with an if statement. So that checks whatever is within the parentheses. And we're going to check to see if the event.target, that input, is checked. So this can be either true or false. So if it's checked, and this checks it sort of after the event, after the click, then, and there's a couple ways to do this, but we're going to play it safe, and we're going to add these brackets. So if it is checked, it does this. If not, else, then we want to change that back to an empty string. So now when we test this, And there we go. Now if we want to do a little more with this, we can say that, by the way, when we're accessing an ID, so a class is accessed with a period, and then the # will access IDs, so we can access this list. And then if we add a second word here, it'll actually access all the divs. And we want to just get, with this here, it'll just get the ones directly beneath it in the tree. You know, one item deep. And we want to say width 12 rem. And then margin 0 auto. Oh, small mistake here. This is supposed to be the ID of the element, not just the word ID. So change that to list. So that's this list here. And then let's make that actually 14. And then we have a smaller bar. You can even add some rounding on that with border radius again. And let's just make it a nice small one. So, alright, we're getting somewhere there. And then what else do we want to do? Let's say we added this item, but rather than delete it and make another item, we want to edit it. Well, there's a handy little device for this. We can just add to this div here containing our text the attribute content editable. So once we add that, anyone can just click on this and edit it as they will. But everything else still works, so you're good to go. And just for completion's sake, let's say we want a dark mode, background black, and we change the color of the text to, let's say, green. Now inputs are funny, so we can actually even do this. This matches everything beneath the body as well. Not necessarily recommended. So, but in this case we could do this and then body input. Now a comma here matches two things separately. So this matches body, and then it goes and matches body input and applies this to both of them. Now you have to watch out when changing things too drastically, because then we also have to change what happens when we click on here. So let's change that to a nice blue. And let's say we want to make that more readable. So there's a few things we can do, but for now, let's say body input, font weight, and here we can make it bold. And except I actually meant to do that on the task item. So now here's the thing, there's actually something called accessibility standards that will test how easy something is to read on a certain background this would score exceptionally poorly. So try and be aware of colors when you're building a website. So as a final move, let's change this background to RGBA. This stands for red, green, blue, alpha. Now this allows you to do a lot more than just picking various color names. So we can say we want this to be not red at all. Maybe a little green. No, let's go not green at all. And we do want it to be a little blue, but not too blue. But let's go 255, which is the maximum. And then we want it just to be barely visible. So now it gives it just sort of a very faint effect. We can amp that up to, let's say, 30%. This multiplies by 100 to get the percentage. And there you have a dark mode. Now, as far as other things you might want to add to this, we can add a button that clears everything at once. Now you could stick this anywhere you like. It can be at the bottom, it can be at the top. We'll stick it at the bottom this time. And this can be an input type button. It could also be a button. So this sort of mostly replaces the input button, but there's still some uses for both, arguably. And we can say clear list. Now, when we click on this, clear list on click. Function once again. And we don't actually need the event for this one, but we do need to fire those parentheses. Otherwise it will not fire the function. So in this case we just find list, we just list, and that refers back to that ID, this element here that we've been filling list items with, and it sets the inner HTML to an empty string. So now when we do this, we don't have to click these individually anymore. We can just click clear list. Now we can change the CSS, the style for this button, just like we did the others. So we can even do body button, and for this button we can also add cursor pointer. And one more, button hover. We can say background, we can lighten it some up to, let's say, RGB. So this is just like RGBA but without the alpha. And don't forget to end all these with semicolons. And these go up from 0 to 255, 3 values. So we're going to set the first one to 100, 100, and then 100. So this will produce sort of a dark gray. So when we hover over that, it turns it gray. We could also say, make it go white with a black colored text. And there we go. We have a to-do app that is styled with a little more functionality, and we learned how to make a dark mode, at least a simple one. And please leave a comment and tell me what other apps you would like to see made. Thank you all for watching. And I will post the code for this app in a link below.